Welcome to Shaq's house. Shaq's house. That's our Shaq. You're now in Shaq's house.
What's up, Shaq Houses? How y'all doing? It's your boy Shaq House right now. It's Thanksgiving week. Hope your turkey day is going to go well. Hope you eat a lot of food, drink up and be merry, and watch a lot of the football games. Yeah, speaking of which, this is another shameless plug for my football podcast, the Victory Formation Lounge, VFL. See the information down in the description for it if you want to subscribe. And also the 301 Colored Commentators, where me and my friend Anthony, a couple of black guys from the state of Maryland, talk about music, pro wrestling, pop culture, movies, and TV shows. Yeah, also, Rexco Comics, which was founded by my friends Nick Allen and Troy Jeffrey Allen, no relation. Yeah, check their information out in the description as well too. I'm an editor for their company. It's a small comic book publishing company here in Maryland. Yeah, so they were good enough to sponsor me, so I'm gonna give them a shout out. But what is this episode about today? This episode is about Mutant Metamorphs. And as the description that you saw, well, not the description, but the feature image you saw when you started the video said, I never met a morph I didn't like. We're going to be talking about Mystique, Copycat, and Morph. That's what we're getting into today, folks, before we get to our great big turkey day. And R.I.P. to Kevin Conroy, who was the voice of Batman in the animated series that used to come on Fox back in the 90s. Yeah, that's the animated Batman I remember the most. So R.I.P. to you. You will be missed. And lastly, this next thing I meant as an ironic pun, but given the recent death of Jason David Frank, it still is an ironic pun, but now it's more of a tribute. Yeah, he played Tommy Oliver on the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I watched Power Rangers during his first 2 years, from 5th to 7th grade, I want to say, before I just fell out of it completely, realizing how formulaic and dumb it can be. But Jason David Frank, he played Tommy, the Green Ranger, the White Ranger, and later, after I stopped watching, the Red Ranger. As far as I'm concerned, he was the GOAT among Power Rangers. So may you rest in peace. And on that note, it's morphin' time!
Okay, Shackhousers, we're going to get right into it, starting with Mystique. Mystique, she's the mother of both Nightcrawler and Graydon Creed, foster mother to Rogue, as well as the wife of Destiny. She's been one of the strongest female antagonists that the X-Men have ever had. She's been a member of the X-Men, currently on Krakoa, starting her shenanigans like usual, which beggars the question, when the fuck will the X-Men ever learn that you can't trust this bitch? But never mind that though, what can she do? Mystique possesses the mutant power of metamorphic shapeshifting. She can psionically shift the atoms and molecules of her own body in order to duplicate any humanoid form. Like most metamorphs, she seems to have a short-range psionic scanning ability, which allows her to perfectly mimic the proportions, coloration, fingerprints, retinal patterns, and vocal cords, etc. of anyone in her immediate vicinity, purely by instinct. She can also consciously control her morphing to assume different humanoid appearances conjured up entirely from her own imagination, like her civilian identity of government supervisor Raven Darkholme. She is skilled at rearranging the outermost layer of her skin to resemble clothing, creating virtually any outfit or style imaginable. She can even remove this clothing if necessary, though not too often without risking an unhealthy loss of her own mass. Besides clothing, Mystique has also shown the ability to form glasses or jewelry onto her own body as well. Mystique was originally limited by the amount of mass that she currently possessed. When she transformed into a larger person, like Sabretooth or Bishop, she still retained her initial 120 pounds. In fact, Mystique was actually weaker physically in these larger forms because she was expanding her mass to its limits to accommodate the massive frame, as a large portion of her insides were hollow like this, filled with nothing but air and empty space. Since her powers were upgraded, Mystique has demonstrated an increased ability to generate mass at will, expanding her body to some degree, but even now, this power is limited by the quantity of mass she can produce and the amount of time she can maintain these expanded forms. Mystique has also learned to use her powers for a number of purposes besides impersonation. Her mutant power renders her body immune to poisons and antigens, and also continuously revitalizes her body cells and DNA memory, slowing her aging process significantly by a factor of 4, so she's at least past her centennial. She can also heal many surface-level injuries like cuts or bruises by rearranging her flesh and cleansing her system of pathogens and poisons in much the same way. She can also blend in with her surroundings by altering the coloration of her skin, shape razor-sharp claws from her fingernails, alter her vision to see in the dark, temporarily add extra limbs, or reinforce bone armor like an exoskeletal armor outside of her skin, etc. And as we all know, she's a cunning strategist in terrorist and commando operations, highly talented and self-trained in both armed and unarmed combat, and she's an expert markswoman. And she can't be trusted. Did I mention that? Copycat. Before we get into her powers, let me just clarify a few things. The Domino who appeared in New Mutants issue number 98 alongside Deadpool was actually Copycat in disguise, as explained through a retcon. Copycat's first name was revealed in X-Force number 11 when she was revealed to not be the true Domino. Her full name and real form was revealed issues later in X-Force number 19. But she first appeared under her code name in Deadpool's first limited series, The Circle Chase, back in 1993. And Copycat's real name is Vanessa Carlisle, and she's the same Vanessa that appeared in the Deadpool movies. And yes, like her movie counterpart, she's also a hooker, but her powers allowed her to become her customer's ideal woman. Her and fellow mutant hooker Stacy X, they should have gotten together and started a new mutant bunny ranch, filled with mutants whose powers were sex-related, or could be used for those purposes. But anyway, what can Copycat do? Copycat's mutation was empathic metamorphosis. In her default form, she possessed pale blue skin, white hair streaked with red and pink, and red pupils on a black iris. Her mutant ability enabled her to attune herself with another person in her vicinity and duplicate their physical, mental, and genetic traits. This generally happened automatically until she fully mastered her power. Initially, she would develop a semi-empathic bond with the person she was shapeshifting into, instinctively understanding their character better. As the process completed itself, she not only assumed the physical appearance of her template, but also their superhuman abilities, if any, and presumably at least some aspects of their memories, personality, special skills such as fighting maneuvers. Once in character, she could remain that way permanently until she chose to consciously reverse the process. Even if she fell asleep or was knocked unconscious, she would still retain her altered appearance. In later years, however, the Weapon X program captured her and altered Copycat's powers, allowing her to change her shape at will like a typical metamorph without needing a template. But now she was unable to duplicate special powers or memories along with the morphing process. Morph. Let me clarify a few things about this morph. The morph in question, he served as a founding member of the Exiles, and he's from the branching reality of Earth 1081. Now, his other near-identical variant is from Earth 295, the Age of Apocalypse. His counterpart in the proper Marvel 616 universe is the Changeling, the very first X-Men to die in action. And lastly, there is a Morph in the 616 universe, but he's a character entirely different. He was a member of the 1950 superhero team known as the First Line. Now Morph, he's an omnimorphic mutant shapeshifter. Unlike standard metamorphs, Morph is capable of transforming into non-human shapes and can alter his internal organs and structure without causing harm to himself. Morph's body defaults into a gray, rubbery state with no nose or distinguishable facial features. He has no scent and can use his morphing ability to heal broken or damaged portions of his body, even reattaching severed pieces on contact. Morph can stretch his body, extending his waist or limbs or whatever to many times their normal length. The unstable molecules that his body is apparently comprised of can be shaped into any sort of shape, clothing, or object that he can imagine. Morph can dress himself in whatever clothes that he can visualize and form various other objects as extensions of his mass, like a football, a length of a chain, road signs, etc. Though he can't permanently separate himself from large portions of his mass without handicapping himself, Morph can separate his body from these clothes or objects without injury, and a finite self-regeneration capacity even allows him to leave relatively small amounts of mass behind without having to worry about pulling himself together. As a shape-changer, Morph is capable of perfectly duplicating any human features he has seen or can imagine. Like many Metamorphs, he seems to have an instinctual psionic ability to scan someone in his presence so that when he morphs into them, he is completely identical to them, down to their fingerprints, retinal patterns, etc. Besides human forms, Morph has also been capable of transforming himself into animals of various sizes and shapes, such as whales, and into inanimate objects, such as a broom or a sheet or a wall. As stated ad nauseum, most shapeshifters have a short-range psionic scanning ability that allows them to precisely replicate the audio patterns and physical characteristics of any person in their immediate radius, purely by instinct. And if they're wearing physical clothing, then they must have some sort of molecular field of sorts that allows them to shift and alter the atoms and molecules of said clothing along with their bodies, as opposed to just using their own mass. Now, a shapeshifter who has full control over their very molecular structure, like Apocalypse, Ape from the Morlocks, Courier, Megan, Piecemeal, and Morph, they don't need to perform an external scan. They can rely on memory and imagination. Now, Mystique's shapeshifting abilities give her limited control over her bodily processes like healing and aging. So do Copycat's after they were altered to work like a typical metamorph. But Morph, he has direct and absolute control over his molecular structure. This allows him to become adaptable to different phenomena, such as immunizing himself to deadly poisons or toxins and giving him broader healing abilities, allowing him to reabsorb severed pieces of his body mass upon contact, or if he can't recover the mass, reconfigure his molecules so that the missing portions of his body are regenerated. If he loses a finger or a hand, for example, he can reform the missing part by drawing mass from his overall stature. And let me help you stop this thought right now. Don't compare Morph to the T-1000 from Terminator 2. Nah, that motherfucker, he had plenty of glitches, as stated in the film, and he was a prototype who could only turn into equal-sized objects that he touched. Now, do all shapeshifters capable of any shape imaginable, like Morph, Megan, Apocalypse, et al., do they accrue and shunt mass extra-dimensionally as a part of their power? The answer is not necessarily. You see, extra-dimensional mass displacement, that's often the easiest explanation for radical size shifting, but it's not the only one. A body could be excessively dense to begin with, allowing more mass to work with. Mystique is a minor example of this. After several power upgrades over the years, Raven now weighs 200 pounds at rest, even though her body traditionally appears like it weighs 120 pounds. If she shrinks down to a child's stature, she's still 200 pounds, and the hidden extra mass gives her body more flexibility when assuming larger forms, like Sabretooth. Rapid cellular growth and reproduction is also a possibility as well. Big Bertha from the Great Lakes Avengers, she has this ability, producing excess tissue at an accelerated rate to go from supermodel to super blob-like proportions. She then has a form of super bulimia that lets her vomit up the excess mass to return to her normal proportions. Now, how does Mystique's power differ from Copycat's? Well, for one, obviously, Copycat is a Mystique knockoff. Her creator, Fabian Nicieza, that was his attempt to create his own version of the more popular shapeshifter, down to being a blue-skinned female mutant who's skilled in espionage and weapons. Even her codename is a joke. But power-wise, it's substantially different. Copycat, she's an empathic biomorph who's closer to Rogue than Mystique. When her power fixated on another person, it caused her to duplicate their appearance, their powers, and attuned her to their emotions and memories, making her a perfect duplicate of them. Getting a feel on them by hanging around them long enough, basically. I mean, her mutant power is basically method acting, like Christian Bale or Daniel Day-Lewis, studying a person until they get their character down pat and staying in character for an extended period of time. It was only after the Weapon X program played with her abilities did Copycat become capable of morphing at will into different shapes other than people around her, although she lost her power duplicating and memory duplicating aspect in the process. Simply put, Mystique is the most standard, Copycat, she's a method actress. Well, actually, if you think about it, all shapeshifters are actors. And Morph, he's just an omnimorph. He can turn himself into anything. And with that in mind, Morph is the most powerful one out of all of them. Morph wins. Okay, Shackhousers, that's what I got today. Comment down below, argue back and forth. I don't care. I enjoy it. But come see me next week. We're going to be talking about mutant image projectors then. Have a happy Thanksgiving, Shackhousers, and I'll see you next week. Happy Turkey Day. Later.
Mansion, apartment.
Shack house. Yes!